Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to style a web page using CSS to make it very colourful. First, you'll need to open your code editor and your web browser like this. In the code editor, create a new file and save it. Okay. Now, make sure you save it as an HTML file so it saves the web page rather than just the code. You don't want to just see the code on the web browser. I'm calling it CSS1.html. .html, not /html, .html. Okay, there. Don't write any code in it yet, but open your coding folder and open the web page in your browser. So now we have the browser and the code editor next to each other so we can see the input and output. As you will have learnt in the last video how to code HTML, I'll do this very quickly. Just add the doctype declaration, add the head tag inside the head, name the title. I'm calling this starting to start your web page using CSS, or styling the page, and also the body. Make sure you put all of it in HTML tags. Good. In the body, I'm going to put a simple structure with a header, styling a page, web page, yeah, using CSS. I will also put some more headers and make a very simple layout. This isn't colourful yet, but we can make it colourful. We will be using CSS, or Cascading Style Sheets. This is a code that will make things colourful and change sizes. It's very useful if you want to be creative. So it stands for C, cascading. I'm putting all the first letters in underlined, you'll see why later. S for style, and S for sheets. Good. So, it will make each element colourful. Actually make the page colourful. That makes more sense. I'm putting colourful in bold. Okay, so we've written a paragraph, and we'll see on the web browser what it looks like. CSS will also change sizes. You have to make sure you know that as well as it's colourful. CSS is very useful. Okay, so at the moment it just looks like this, but we want it to make it look much more colourful. So let's have a paragraph to start experimenting on. Remember to save and reload your Control-S and Control-R. Control-R will be in the web browser. So we're learning to do CSS with a style attribute. What a style attribute is something you add to an element, and you can change the CSS code related to it. An element is something like this paragraph in p tags. So you add it to the first tag, and it adds the attribute. You type the word, style, then put equals, then in double straight quotes, you start typing your CSS code. So you've got a property. For this property, it's colour. Remember, you have to use the American spelling. Colon, then the value, then the semicolon. But what are we going to put in the value? I'm going to make it colour blue. If we see what this does, it will make the text colour blue. Always remember the American spelling. I'll try doing background colour. Whenever you do multiple words for a property in CSS, you have to put a hyphen between them, like this. I'm going to make the background colour yellow. Now if I save and reload, got blue text on a yellow background. I wonder if you want a bit more of a specific colour. We'll do that later, but now let's do some other things that aren't just colourful. You can add a text align property. If you put text line left, the text will stay on the left. Text line centre, American spelling, it will be in the centre like that. And text line right, you can probably guess, the text will be on the right. So now we've learned how to position text and make it colourful. I wonder if we want to make it more colourful. We'll use something called a Hex Color Picker. Just search the internet for one. You should get something like this. What you do is you have to choose a colour on it. I'm going to choose a bit of a gold one. And that's a bit too yellow. That's a good gold. And there'll be a hex code. Copy that, Control C, or just right click and copy. And then paste that, Control V, into your value. That means rather than something vague like yellow, you can have a more specific colour like that. And now we've now got that sort of golden colour in the background. That's very useful if you want to make your own personalised colours and show how creative you are. There's another property called font size. Remember the hyphen. In the font size, I'm going to put 30 pix. PX stands for pixels. 30 pixels. Or I'm going to say, in my text editor, I use something, font size 72. That's 72 points. So rather than PX, we put PT. And you'll see this is 72 points. I'm going to change this to 20 points. Yeah, that looks good. So we've done all of this with a style attribute. Change a normal paragraph to something like that. Okay. Wow, we've changed a lot. Now, let's add some other stuff. CSS doesn't always just need an attribute. So let's see how you can change multiple elements. So I'm going to add lots of paragraphs. Let's make all the paragraphs I'll put all in bold. Let's make all the paragraphs have green text. How we do this is we get to the head, we put an element in it called the style element, like this. So, style tag and then the closing style tag. No, not script, style. Style. Style, style, style. Okay, the style element. I made a bit of a mistake. In the style element, say we want to make all the paragraphs have green text. The paragraphs are the P elements. Should we write P? Then I put a pair of curly brackets. And in between the curly brackets, we put the code just like we put it in the attribute. So, I'm going to put the colour property, colon, then the name of the colour, then semicolon. We want to make them green. So let's put colour, colon, green, semicolon. If we do that, all the paragraphs have green text, except the one we've done with the style attribute. The style attribute overrides the style element. Okay, let's continue this. And give it a background colour. So let's make all the paragraphs have green text and a red background. So how we do that? It's exactly the same. You might want to put each property on a different line though, so it's easier to read. Background colour, red. And that's just like in the attribute. That doesn't look very good. I'll change that background colour. Background colour changes to pink. CSS is very flexible and you can do a lot of things with it. Done. Ooh, green on pink, that looks good. Okay, now we're going to learn something else. Let's add a header, some more paragraphs. Okay, I'm going to add some paragraphs. So we've got paragraph 1, Now, make sure you know that's odd number, because we'll be needing that later. Paragraph 1, odd. Paragraph 2, even. Paragraph 3, no, that's odd. Paragraph 4, even. And paragraph 5, odd. Now I'm going to add another attribute, like how we added the style attribute, but this time it's called the class attribute. So let's add a class attribute, and inside the class attribute put odd for the odd paragraphs. So B class equals odd. For the even paragraphs, put P class equals even. So all the odd paragraphs have a class of odd, and all the even paragraphs have a class of even. So if we continue this and add the classes, even and odd. Okay, this has done nothing yet. But why don't we use CSS to style odd and even separately? What we have to do in the style element, we put a dot to express a class and odd. Do the same with even, dot even. Now, what we put inside that is all the properties you want to add to the odd ones. So say you want to make the text align left. For the even ones, say you want to make the text align right. There. Okay. Let's also make the odd ones have a background colour. Or colour, yes, I'll do colour of blue. And the even ones have a colour of gold. You can see how I'm indenting the CSS code to make it easier to read with the spaces before each line. Okay, that gold looks a bit light, so first, to make the odd and even ones, to add properties to both of them, you just have to put a comma between both ones. Remember the dot before the class name. Background colour white. So we want the odd ones and the even ones to have a white background colour rather than the default paragraph pink. We've got this. Okay, so now that even colour, that's a bit light. Yeah, let's. Yes. Okay. That will do. Yes. Or should I change that to gold or not? Okay, I'll choose not to. This, say the first H2, you can add an ID attribute to it too. Main H2. An ID attribute is like a class attribute. Though, an ID attribute, there can only be one element with that ID. So main H2, there's only one main H2. And to define an ID in CSS, you put a hashtag before the word, rather than a dot for a class. So I've made main H2 colours blue. Good. Now, look, what we do next? A div element. You won't have come across this before, but a div element, if we surround all the some more paragraphs with a div element, that acts just like a CSS thing. Let's add the div element an ID of paragraphs. So in the CSS element, put dot paragraphs, not dot hash because it's ID. Yes. The background colour, let's set that to red. Got red background. And change that background colour to go to yellow. The paragraphs still have a white background colour. We've defined that for the odd and even paragraphs. That gold, I'll change that now. It's a good time now of looking at it. Navy, there. blue and navy, navy, dark and blue. Okay. So say you want to add some more paragraphs inside the div. It'll work exactly like it was before. Just adding paragraph 6, paragraph 7. Because paragraph 6 is even and paragraph 7 is odd, they get styled separately, and the div still has a yellow background in. Okay, so now I'm going to add another div, but I'm giving it the class I'll give it the class. Okay, I'll give it the class. Quickly, I'll give it the class spaces. Good. Now, I'm just putting spacing it out inside it. So that's a div. That's a paragraph. For that, I can just put dot spaces because it's the class spaces. Actually, name that to an ID because there's only going to be one spaces. That'll make it more efficient and easier to understand. Slash spaces. Hash spaces. Sorry. Background color. I'm going to set that to light green. And I'm also going to set the color to dark green. Spacing it out. Now, I'm going to add a new one called, actually not yet, text line center. Good. Now, I'm going to add some new ones. I'm going to add a width. You can probably guess what this does. I'm just setting the width to 200 px or 200 pixels, and I'll only make that 200 pixels. Say I want to make this shorter or longer, I can do it. Just with the width. At the moment, the width won't change depending on the width of the screen. But if you put it to a percentage like 50%, it'll be 50% of the width. So you can do that and that. And it will always fit 50% of the width of the viewport. The viewport is the amount of screen of the browser. Say you want to do the height will make the height, as you probably guessed. Say you want to add that to 50%. It won't work. That's because we have to add some other code. 50 pixels will work, so we know the height will work. But for 50%, how do we do that? So we need to add, in the style element, body and HTML, comma, for both of them. We want them to have a height of 100%. This now means that we say the screen has a height of 100%, so it will fit 50% of the height of the screen. Good. And the width and height will change depending on how I scale it. Okay. What if you want to add space between the text and the edge of the box? Or the edge of the box and the edge of the screen? You can use viewport width for the width of something, or VH for the height of something, which is exactly the same, but it's just sometimes easier to use percent. Because percent is the percentage of the width slash height of the thing it's inside. But viewport width or viewport height is the viewport or the actual screen. Let's take spaces. Okay. I'll copy the spaces and add the same thing to something called spaces B. The word out will be another div with spaces B. So we've got the word out, spaces B, inside the spaces div. And that shows that the width and height, if we change the background colour to make it much easier to see, so light blue and dark blue, which looks quite good, I think. Yeah, you can see because its width and height are 50%, it's 50% of the element inside, which is the ID spaces. If we change this to VH and VW, view height and viewable width, it's 50% of the height of the screen and 50% of the width of the screen. Let's change them back to percent, so we can see both of them will scale depending on the one they're inside. Okay. If we see this, why don't we add space between the text and the edge of the box? It's called padding. And add a padding of 10 pixels. What that does is it sort of adds an area around the inside of the box between the text. It makes it look better. You do the same for margin. The margin will be outside the box, and you'll see that's why there's a bit of white space around it. And there's something in between the padding and margin that we haven't seen yet. Border. What you put there is a pixel value, 3 pixels, and then a space, and then solid, dotted, dashed, or double. One of those to show what style you want the border to be. I'm going to do a solid border at the moment. Now we need a colour. I'm going to choose dark green or gold. I might do dark green later. Gold looks really good. Solid can be changed to dotted or dashed or double. So this dotted will show there are dots around the edge, and if you look closely you can see the dots around the edge of that box. If I do dashed, there's dashes around the edge, or lines. The dots are circular, but the dashes are more like lines. And then we've got double. What double will do is this. You see 2 lines. If we do something like double dotted, that won't work, because we only have one style. It doesn't even know what to do with the border. So I'm just going to use dashed. Good. Okay, so we've put one there with margin, border, and padding. Let's copy that border and paste it there. Let's say we want to make that 5 pixels and dotted, and the colour would be red. So we can add a 5 pixel dotted red one there. That's 5 pixels, so the dots are bigger. I'm going to add some margin of 5 pixels and a padding of 5 pixels, and we'll see it's been spaced out. There, that looks good. Okay. We've done all of this. Change the width to 100%, but that won't fill the normal width because the margin and padding sort of add a bit of extra width to it. Let's just keep it at 50% at the moment. Okay. So we've done a lot. We spaced out things, made them colourful. This looks very different to what we did last time. Okay, so let's add something for H1, the main header at the top. Defining a web page using CSS header. Let's make the colour navy, the background colour light blue. Good. But we probably want to add a border, some margin, and some padding. Okay, so I'll add margin, 5 pixels, a padding of 5 pixels. Good, and now let's do the border. We'll text the line of center, then the border. Last. The border will be 1 pixel solid navy blue. Actually 5 pixel solid navy will be easier to see and I think will look better. Done. And that's what it looks like with the texture line, border, margin and padding. Makes it look much better than a normal H1. And everything scales, including the box at the bottom. So we've done a lot. I'm now going to add something for H2. It will be the same as that, except the margin, padding and border width will be 3 pixels rather than 5 pixels. So it'll look very similar, except you see the spaces are slightly different. All H2s will be put like that. The top H2 ID, which means that it will be the normal blue that is specified in the ID, because the ID overrides the tag name. So let's add a border radius. So the main space is green box. Border radius will add rounded corners of 10 pixels because I put 10 px. I can change that to something even like 50 pixels, make a very rounded corners. Or you can use a percentage like 50%, which will do 50% of the available size, making it an ellipse or circle. Or 10% even. And if we scale the screen, you'll see the border radius will also scale because it's a percentage. Okay. So we've added colours and background colours, text align, more colours, more background colours, more colours, but we've used classes, IDs, we've added spacing, we've added ID attributes, we've added a lot, but there's still some more to go. So, let's see what we're going to do next. We're putting an ID on that first paragraph, calling it P1. You can use, remember the hash, and you can use numbers and IDs. P1U though means the underline element inside P1. So if we want the underlined element inside P1, if you want it to be coloured red, see the CSS. It's gone red because there were U elements inside P1. Or if you do P1B, the bold elements inside P1. I'm going to make the colour go to yellow. Yeah, yellow, not yellow green. You see, that's got yellow. It's quite difficult to read, but still quite good. And there's another one called font weight. This will show how bold it is. I could even make the bold part not bold. With 100, font weight 100, it's very thin. Font weight, well, not that, 900 is very bold. So, font weight normal is the normal font weight, like normal text. I'm just going to make that font weight bold as well. And I'll do bold like normal, but you can do that to ones that aren't B elements. Font weight 10,000, very bold, I think that's a bit big. Font weight 100, very light, so I'm putting the font weight 100. I'll also change the colour to light blue so it's easier to see. Oh, that's very difficult to see still. Blue. Yeah, that's good. What happens for the underline if we want to take the underline off? We'll use text decoration. If you put text decoration none, there'll be no underline. Text decoration underline, we'll put an underline. So it says no underline, because none. If you put text decoration underline, we'll have one underline. If we put text decoration straight like through, that won't work. So it doesn't understand, so it makes it normal underline. Middle, that won't work either. Well, nor centre will. But you can have one called overline. Or something like that. So let's see what that does. Centre won't work. Though I'll type overline. And the line's on top. So just for fun, I'm going to make the underline element have no underline. It's just the colours that makes them different. Okay, for the spacing it out thing, I'm going to add an image in the background. How we do that is you can use a website like Pixabay, which I'm going to use to find an image. So I'm going to find an image of some leaves. They're loading and I think that one looks quite nice. So right click, copy image location, address or URL like we did in the last video. And for this, you add to the element background image. Now, you don't just paste the URL. You put URL and then in brackets, you add the image URL. But the image URL needs to be in double straight quotes, like that. And if you put it there, you'll see it's gone green. Remember to save and reload. There's another thing called background size. That background size can be cover, contain, or just not be there. Cover will make it cover the whole screen, cover the whole element. But contain will make it contain the image, sometimes duplicating it like that. Depends what size of the image you want. Today we've done a lot. Whoa. Cover. Okay, I'm going to keep that at cover. We've added loads of colours, spaces, background images. This looks very exciting. We've done a lot with style element and attribute, IDs and classes. Let's just for fun comment out the CSS in the style element. We put a slash and a star and a slash at the end. This is what it would look like without CSS. The style attribute is still there. I could even comment out the style attribute with the slash and star, then star, then slash. And this is what it looks like without CSS. Now with CSS, delete the commenting. Like this. And you can see how useful CSS is. It seems transformed. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe to this channel for more videos about coding. I hope you enjoyed making CSS and learning how to make your web page colourful and exciting. Goodbye.